Right, good morning everyone. Oh wait, we don't have everyone. Oh, nearly missed the pre-brief. My name is Fred. This one is Rob. Captain whatever is Parish. We're from Order of the Blade. So today we're going to run through Sword and Shield. This is something you won't find in a manuscript if you've engaged with HEMA in the past, because there aren't any. This has been developed entirely through 2 years of what we call percussive education. Okay, if it didn't work and you got hit, it was a shit idea, stop doing it. So everything we're going to show you today has been pressure tested repeatedly. We worked it out the other day. Between us, me and Rob have done somewhere in the region of about 600 to 700 bouts exclusively using board with a variety of different weapons, not always sword because he likes his axes. So what we're going to do is just show you 4 guards that we've developed, some cuts you can launch from them, and if we get time, I'll show you some of the really filthy things that you can do, because boards are just cheeky. Terminology we're going to use. So there's 3 types of shield that we will dish out. There are heaters. These are the small triangular strapped ones. As best as we know, they're called heaters because the Victorians saw the shape of an iron, and oh, it's the same shape as a heater, and the name stuck. That's a heater. The next size up is what we call a demi-kite, which is that thing there. So these are bigger than a heater, but they are smaller than a kite, hence the name. There's no history to that one, we just call it that. And then the final one is the round shield. Guess why it's called a round shield? There's only actually 2 types of family of shield though. Center grips and strap grips. And they handle differently. So depending on what you're interested in, if you want to do stuff with a round, everything we show you will work, but there are extra things that you can do with a round that you can't with a heater. Does that all make sense to everyone? Cool. If you've never used a shield before, I would gently suggest picking up a heater, because they're slightly smaller, the weight distribution is better, and as you will very quickly discover, shields get heavy. If you're confident, if you're reasonably hench, go for a round. And if you're not sure, try a demi-kite. Dig in. Is everyone beshielded? Good.
Come on, Wankle.
So whilst he's sorting himself out because he transfers on the regular, we're just going to very quickly talk about stance and energy conservation. Can everyone just adopt a guard that feels about right with a shield? You've done it before. Good. Yeah, that's about right, actually, for a round. For a round, that's about right. Cool. So, one of the first things, you give someone a shield, everyone does this. If you look at me, what targets can you see? That. Now, I can see what happens above the crown edge of the shield. I can't see what's going on down there. So one of the easiest ways to get bruised to buggery, as I know, is for someone to put in a nice high cut, you chuck your board up, and then they just take your shin. So, there's 3 ranges that we work off. There's reasonably safe unless someone throws something at you. There's threat range, and there's close quarters, aka I've done a bad, because at that point you're just going to get messed up. So if I'm in range with Parish, threat range, as in a single step, he could step and hit me, I don't want this leg forward. I want this other one forward, because then if he decides to go for a leg shot, A, there's no leg there, and B, his head's completely open. So when we do this, we're in full gear. I don't recommend hitting each other on the head. However, that is one of the targets we go for. So, with no more ado, guards.
So we'll start with closed gate. This is the one that most of us use most of the time. And from the social media we've done, bow hurt is starting to learn from this.
If you don't know what bow hurt is, we'll rant about that in a minute.
Yeah. They're the crayon eaters in plate armor.
Yeah.
So you have your shield up. If you have a round, those of you that have, you want about 45 degrees away from your body to allow stuff to blow off it. If you have a heater, you are covering your body across, but sticking it out away from you. That gives your sword arm breathing room. Then what we're going to do is you're going to take your hand up in the air and your blade down over the top. From here, you can cover everything from your torso higher without moving this structure, just moving at the hips. Because if a cut comes in, don't have to do a lot. We do teach a lot of what you could call lazy fighting, or brutal efficiency is the other way of looking at it. So from closed gate, you go here, you are locked out, nothing can get to you. If I have a round, I do actually do the opposite thing, and I have my left leg or my shield leg forward solely to help me brace with the weight. It gives me a better structure underneath the shield, because this is about 3.5 kilos.
And if you are using a round, you will feel it.
Yeah, it also means that when I drop it down, I can rest it on this leg. However, when I engage somebody, I will 9 times out of 10 be stepping to here. So I am fighting from here, but I will start from here. What you then learn is that this leg, because it's not back all the time, has a trigger function, and it does this, just so it's not there anymore. If somebody comes to this leg, I will stay exactly where I am and keep going.
It looks very cool when you do it, and it annoys people.
That one is possibly the simplest of it. Second one is the other one, which is quite brutal, and you can see it coming, but that's what we kind of want. So shield up in the same position, and sword resting on your shoulder. This is Hugh Ahoy, because I'm fairly sure everybody here can take a fairly educated guess as to where this is going. That is full body weight, full passing step, all of the torque from your torso ploughing this through. This is a big hammer shot that you can put through from here. Not so it's the only thing you can do from there, but it is what most people will think is coming from there. They will see this and just assume you are going to slam that in hard, and it will give them what we like to call a brown trouser moment. That's the first two.
That's the first two.
Yeah.
So the next two. Hidden Serpent. Hidden Serpent is pretty much a Ronseal job. It does exactly what it says on the tin. The blade is the serpent, and you hide it behind the shield. So from the side, it looks like this. Generally, I tend to have it low, so lower than the arm grip. So it sits about here in this bottom third of the tail section. The reason for this is there's 4 strikes that you can do, and I'll show you 2 of them now. If you engage in LARP or reenacting, these won't be a lot of use to you because they are thrusts, which are generally prohibited. However, they are filthy. So the first one is just simply over the top. Punch the sky as high as you can, drop and in. And the reason for this is it gets around the shield's defences. So if Rob's there, punch, drive high and in. Even if he brings his board up to cover it, the chances are he's just guiding the blade into his own face. So it's a reasonably horrible thing that you can do to people who have a shield. It's not the most horrible. That's the next one. Now, I did come up with all the names, and they are designed so that you'll remember them. This is the ice cream scoop of death. We were going to go with Dicky Hitty, but sometimes we do this to, younger audiences, and it's not appropriate. So, ice cream scoop of death. From this point, you allow the point of the sword to just gently lower, and then with a big scooping motion, drive upwards. If your opponent is very lucky, this will start, as in it will hit at the groin and skid all the way up and finish at the throat. If your opponent is not lucky, it starts at the groin and stops there. At which point you go, oh God, I'm sorry, are you okay? You pause, you have a little giggle, and then you carry on. It is really brutal. It was inspired by one of the Norse sagas, a cut called Fisk, which is designed to open someone like a fish being gutted. Not particularly nice. However, really effective, and it frightens people. Because you see a blade coming in there, all of a sudden you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're thinking about that.
Or more importantly, you don't see it come in, you feel it first.
As he can attest. So the final guard we're going to show you is deliberately named to tell you what it's all about. It's the Admiral Akbar. Because it is a trap. And it's literally just this. All I'm doing is I'm resting the point out to the side. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I want there to be a nice big opening up here. So you can see shoulder, you can see head, the arm itself, and I'll even tank the board on this leg. Because, does everyone know what the true edge false edge is? Good. True edge is the knuckle side of the weapon. False edge is the wrist side of the weapon. Arming swords have 2 edges, And I firmly believe it's because they were used like this. From here, all I'm going to do is lash the point up. So it's the wrist side motion flicking it skywards. You can aim this to land anywhere from the back of the heels to the crown of the skull, and it's a scalping blow. We don't recommend doing that against anyone who does not have full back of head protection, because the C3-4 vertebrae is the human off switch, as in permanently off. So when we do this, generally, I'll aim roughly around mid-high on the top of the overlay there, and it looks like this. So it comes in and lands. Now, if you didn't have a helmet on, that's scalp flying, wig gone. However, if you're in a battle line scenario, you don't necessarily want to be deliberately ending people. You just want to create a hole in the line. We can do that quite easily. From the same position, you just lash it in lower, at which point it'll hit the calf, the thigh, the hamstring, or the bum, if you want to be cheeky. So that's the 4 guards. What we're going to do now is we're going to get everyone to pair off. Make a friend if you haven't brought one. Otherwise, we have a pre-made friend here. And what I would like is for those of you, basically, one of you to work out to be an attacker. Pick a guard and start putting gentle, controlled shots at your opponent. Your opponent, who is the defender, pick a guard and start to work out how you can defend against it. Does that all make sense? So attackers pick a guard, attack from it, gentle and controlled. Defenders pick a guard, defend in it. And we'll circulate and provide unsolicited opinions. When you're ready, crack on. A bit of time. Rob, do you want to talk about hips?
Yeah, I mean, with the round on the same part of that, I will generally rest mine on my knee if I'm not doing anything. Or you can rest it all the way up here and allow it to sit on your head, on your shoulder, just to take some of the weight out for a moment. To do that, you want to best be learning to get from this position to this position as fast as possible. And also, occasionally, I will also train to go from here to here, just so that you can cover everything. When we're looking at our hips, I've noticed several people are fighting to the side almost. So you're stood with your back foot planted, pointing one way, and your front foot pointing another, which turns your hips this way, which then, whilst you're here, is fine. But the moment you try and come here, notice that my board naturally moves out of the way and I'm now open. Whereas, if I put both of my feet facing my opponent, my hips can be facing my opponent. So now I can stand here, cover here, and still do this. And at no point does my board open up at all. It can stay where it is. And that's for both heaters and rounds. It just allows you to completely cover your own body. Essentially, with a shield, your opponent should not be able to see your torso. At any point, I can just have it and hold it. Doesn't matter where we go, what we're doing. You cannot see my torso behind the shield, so I can't get stabbed.
So the shorthand for that is toes to foes. Dead easy to remember. If you turn out the back foot as well, the other problem is when sparring starts to get more intense, at some point you'll think, right, I want to back off now. It's a lot harder to back off when your hind foot is facing this way, because now all the weight distribution is wrong. Both toes are to the foe. The weight naturally sits on the balls of the feet, so it's very easy to suddenly start moving forwards and backwards or to the side as you need. So don't, basically, toes to foes. Cycles?
Yeah.
Cool. So, one of the things I hope everyone has noticed with board is, do you manage to get a hit on the first cut every time? No. It's because there's a bloody big block of wood in the way, isn't there? Yeah. It's the shield doing its job. So, when me and Rob fight, we will generally tend to go to about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Something like that. But we don't try to land cuts on the first go, or the second, or the third. We tend to cut to the 8th intention. We do this using a method that we call cycling attacks. So this is just multiple repeated attacks thrown at your opponent. Does 2 things. Number 1, it keeps them responding to what you're doing, unless they're quite good and they interrupt it. And number 2 is they then have to maneuver their shield or their sword. So you're now tiring them out, which means eventually their board will not be where they want it to be, but it's exactly where you want it to be, and you can then lamp them, essentially. The way cycles work, particularly with an arming sword, these tend to be quite forward-weighted and choppy. Certainly compared to later swords, they are very choppy. Even with the boffers, even though it's a stick, the weight wants it to move forward. So the idea with cycling is, there's a number of angles the blade can move through, and there's a number of rotations your arm can make, and you combine them. Now, my favorite training methodology for this is what I call FIG, or flail in the garden. Get a stick and literally just see how it moves and what you can do, because then when you move into sparring with that pattern, it's an almost universal pattern because everyone's body works vaguely the same, but suddenly it becomes useful to you. With cycling, I tend to start them out of range, so I'll be cutting the air. There is a reason for this. One, it's momentum, and two, keep your opponent guessing. So as I'm closing in on Rob, he didn't know which of those was going to make contact. So then when they do start making contact, he's now having to fight to deal with, actually, where the hell is the blade going to be next? Is it going to be coming in here? Will it be low? We don't know. Does that all make sense to everyone? Good. If you've got water, do me a favour, just take a little drink now because the heat is starting to get up. I don't want anyone having issues. And then what we'll do, I'll show you one very, very filthy thing that you can do. And then we'll do a bit more sparring. And then we'll go from there. There is a really, really, really filthy move that you can pull from Hidden Serpent. And I call it the Winding Serpent. So, has everyone heard of the centre line concept? Down the middle of your body lies all the things you need to continue to function as a human being. If any of those are interrupted, it's very bad for you. So the board naturally sits on or just over the centre line. So if your fist is in the middle of your chest, you've got enough coverage there that you're safe, but you've also got enough room to manoeuvre your sword even when it's out. So far, so sensible. From Hidden Serpent, sometimes it's nice to be able to strike from my left, from my shield side. However, it's awkward to do because you've got a block of wood in the way. So when we tend to do this, remembering toes to foes, as we take a full step, it rotates the torso because the hip follows the foot. So from here, as I step, my board is now naturally over there. Can you see this nice little window that's opened up here? So all of a sudden, having taken that step forward, I now have a window. And all I'm going to do is scoot forward and round. Now the idea for this is it gets round the back edge of a board. Parish, do you want to front and centre for me? So as I'm facing Parish, he's got a nice window down here to get. Winding Serpent, he can't see what's happening. This step from my shield leg forward rotates me round, and you can put the thrust in. And it's that sideways motion. That's what drives it round the board edge. Now the blade will tell me if I've managed to prod him. If I haven't, I can still manage a draw cut, which is to place the blade on and pull it back. It's not lethal, but it is annoying and debilitating. It's quite difficult to fight when you're thinking, oh, I've been hurt. So, Winding Serpent is a really, really nice way of completely foxing your opponent's perception of what you're doing. Big chunk of certainly how I fight is to live rent-free in my opponent's head and keep them wondering what on earth is he going to throw out next. So pair off, find a friend, make a friend. We have a pre-made friend. And just try it with a bit more range and try the Winding Serpent. Keep it nice and gentle because although these are boffers, there is a core in them that will hurt if you get prodded too hard. Cool, right guys, so when you're cycling, as in cutting, you will eventually reach a point in the cycle where actually your arm's not going to move any further because you've ended up in a weird situation. For me, it's normally I've come down and my choice is either fight my own momentum to drive it back up or flick the false edge round. Now from here, I can deliver a nice round cut. and then I finish here. Now from here, a thrust is my natural instinct, but I don't want my opponent thinking about what I'm going to do next. I just want them responding to what I've just done to them. So typically this involves a board jab. Jabbing with the board, the intent is not to make contact. Certainly not when we do it anyway. With Viking rounds, it's slightly different because you can lock out someone's arm using the lead edge. So if I'm in close enough, my sword is not doing me a lot of good at this point. So this is the one time where we advocate making contact with the board. However, if I'm cycling away at Rob and he's starting to work out where the blade is going and all this, think about that. What happens is, as I push the shield forward, it occupies more of his vision, which covers more of me. So the thrust I've got lined up can now wind through, and he's less likely to spot it. Second thing it does, as you probably notice, shield fighting is quite tiring, and some of that is the cognitive load, because you're tracking your weapon, your shield, your footwork, their shield, their sword, their footwork. So when you start jabbing out, as we call it, the human monkey brain or the hindbrain goes, thing coming at me, hit it. Well, that's great, because the second that happens, so do a jab. He now knows where my sword is. He doesn't need to worry about it. He's free to do what he wants, because you can control what's happening and you can feel it through the shield. And it's just an inbuilt response. People see something moving towards face and they think, deal with it. And whilst they're dealing with it, you can stab them under the armpit and get the brachial artery. What time are we on now? Just one sec. 5-2, cool. We'll pause it there, because I don't know about you, I'm starting to get very, very hot and sweaty. And the shields are probably getting heavier. However, does anyone have any questions? Any questions?
One question then, just like a technical question.
Yeah.
But just pure sword and shield, what would you say is the best model, the heater or the Viking? Just as we're like,
That's a long conversation. The short answer is it depends on your height, your psychology, and your physical conditioning.
And your weapon.
And the weapon you're using.
Yeah.
So, well, not even different types of sword.
Yeah.
Axes. So these are synthetic rubber heads. They're not steel, but an axe changes the dynamic of a fight. Here you go, Rob. This is your area. Talk about axes.
So as you can see, axe is simple by comparison to a sword, in that the only bit of steel is at the head, therefore that's where the weight is. So for stuff like cycling, it's perfect for it because it already wants to go. Now, axes, when they're aimed at people, are not the same as tree felling axes. Against a person, I do not need to heft. Because you only need it, what is it, like a pound of pressure to go through a person's flesh? Right, if this is sharp and curved, so that only the point that makes impact is where all of the pressure comes through, I can just do it from here. And that is going to go in and cause serious damage. The other side of it is I can hook. Nobody enjoys having your blade hooked from you, especially the first time it happens, because you don't know how this works, you don't know what's going on. And the same with a shield. If somebody has something like a round shield, right, these things are heavy, held on that hand. So there are two main options to stop it, even if we take out of these sides the fact that an axe would start going holes in it, is I'm just going to knacker out his arm. Just keep rolling it, make him put it back. Or you do it the other way around, you get your axe on the edge, yank it out and make him do the same. Because I know that that's his body motion. So if I've got shield, I can tank this, see you later, because that shield is going to be so heavy and pulling it back is a problem. Whereas on a heater, I would never try and hook a heater, because this held in just my hand against you've got two straps on it, your ability to pull back and yank this out of my hand is far easier. Yeah,
and we have done exactly that.
You can just pull it. Because the interesting thing about a hook is the person who instigates the hook normally knows what's going to happen. Somebody who gets used to a hook goes, hang on a minute, I'm not attached to you, you're also attached to me, and they yank back. So it then becomes a game of strength. So yeah, axes are far more fun. They're far more finesse weapon than people give them credit for, because you want to look after your haft. If Parish cuts into me, this is not an optimal block. It may, if you think about live blades, it might stop the first one. Second or third, if it keeps coming in, that's going to snap. So instead, what I'm actually going to do is use his momentum against him with an axe and do this. Also leaves his throat open quite nicely. Axes, I feel, are heat guided. Axes 9 times out of 10 will find their way to somebody's neck more than a sword will. A sword, you'll hit any part of a body. You start training with an axe, and instinctively you just find yourself, oh, that's your neck again. Yep, that's still your neck. That's your neck. You just hones in on that part of the body, like that's where it wants to hit you. So yeah, if you ever get a chance, try and train with some axes, but take it slow. They are quite dangerous. There's a lot less flex in these things. But if anybody later on wants to have a chat further and deeper about different axes, because I own 4, 5 different types of axe, by all means, come and have a chat. Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's one thing I have found, which I've taken a little bit from Shillelagh, the Irish walking stick fighting. So they hold it with a bit of haft down next to their arm. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Parish hit himself. All his momentum hitting the bottom half of my haft just catapults the head into him. He did that. All I did was this. And all I've got to do is aim it for where he's incoming, and that's it. The head will go in. And all of the force generated from it is the force he put into this end. Then with a bit extra by the time you do the maths on how much the curve goes. So yeah, absolutely disgusting things, but finesse weapons. Definitely not a peasant's weapon. I don't care what anybody says.
No. They also come with back spikes, so you can still do false edge work.
I mean, you can do false edge with this, but it's now
more of a hammer. So axes and boards do go together very well. The other thing is buckaroo. If you hammer an axe head into a board with enough force, it's going to stick. Now, most people go into battle with many, many different things. So I can let go of my axe. Congratulations, you've now got an axe sticking out of your board. I don't need that because I've got something else to hit you with. While he's trying to work out how to deal with, there's now extra weight on there, probably being quite tired, I can run up and jab him in the face. So yeah, swords and boards. Any other questions? There's no such thing as a silly question when shields are concerned. Do penguins have knees? Give me 6 months in an Arctic expedition, I'll let you know. Or Antarctic, I should say. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, everything we've shown you today has been pressure tested extensively. I was striped black and blue from here to here for 6 months before I figured out just put the shield leg back, because it was all people could see and it was all they were going for. They weren't bothering with the head because this stands forward. We like to work on the psychology of it as well. Using shields, you've got to live in your opponent's head. You've got to make them respond to what they think you're going to do. You want them analysing what you're doing, which makes them forget about what they intended to do, which then means you're in control of what's happening. Sometimes, because me and Rob have sparred a lot, we can read each other very well. So in a cycle, he'll know, actually, if I put a cut out now, that disrupts what Fred's going to do. Suddenly he's in control, so then I have to work it out. The other thing is, as well, is thinking in circles. You don't just have to go backwards and forwards, there's also side to side. One of the best ways of dealing with someone who's using something in either hand is to circle around so that one of the things is of no use. And counterintuitively, if you're fighting someone with a board and you want to try doing that, circle to their weapon arm, because a shield is not a lot of use to them over here, whereas you've got a board to deal with their blade, and then you can do whatever you want to them. So the psychology of it, it gets very technical. We like to think that when you get proficient at it, shield work is close to chess than checkers, because you're suddenly counting 4 weapons moving, plus people, plus speed, plus range, plus your intent, their intent. The cognitive load is as big as the physical load. So that was Sword and Board. If you're on Instagram, he's on there as Rob the Axeman. I'm on there as Fred Fights. We are Order of the Blade. If you're in the East Midlands, we've got clubs bloody everywhere. So if you ever want to pop down, just let us know beforehand. more the merrier. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Get yourself some water. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks.